Hi, I'm John Green, and I'm here with my friend of 15 years, Daniel Biss, who is your next governor of Illinois, and also a long, long time friend of mine. So I'm excited to talk to you today, Daniel. But I just want to give people a little bit of background on who I am and why I'm here. I am a novelist and video blogger. I wrote a book called The Fault in Our Stars, which was made into a movie, and a few other books as well, most recently Turtles All the Way Down. My second novel, An Abundance of Catherines, is about a child prodigy who is trying to develop a mathematical theorem that will help him understand why romantic relationships end. And Daniel wrote the math in that book. He and I have been friends for a long time, since we were in our early 20s, since Daniel was merely a PhD, just after Daniel had gotten his PhD in mathematics from MIT and joined the faculty of the University of Chicago, and I was working as an assistant at a magazine. Um, Daniel has always impressed me from the very beginning. I've always been in awe of his talent and his honesty. The fact that he's a person of extraordinary integrity, and I think that shows in the way that he's chosen to live his life and run this campaign. And I'm so excited to support his campaign and to support him as he runs for governor. And his whole political career, he's just impressed me so much. So it's a thrill to be here, to be able to talk to Daniel about his campaign and about what he's doing. And so with that, hi, Daniel.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's nice to talk to you. I should also say that people can leave questions in the Facebook Live chat, and we will endeavor to answer as many of those questions as possible. Yeah, so that's going to be good. And I should say that right now, Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong about any of this. If you make a small donation to Daniel's campaign, I think it's $150 or less, that donation will be matched by a large donor. I have donated to Daniel's campaign. I have donated, I think, to every campaign that Daniel has had, because I just believe so much in what he's doing. I don't make a lot of political contributions, but for Sara and me, having people like Daniel in public office is tremendously important, and it's something that we value, and we hope that you'll consider making a donation. Was that all correct?
All those things were correct. Yeah, there's someone who's got the ability to make a big donation, and he felt, to be honest, kind of uncomfortable about it, and he said he would only do it if it was matched by small donations, which I think is both helpful but also a pretty awesome way to think about the communal nature of political giving if you do it right.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if we can talk about. Well, first off, how did you? How did we meet?
So you and I have different stories about this. I think they're true, but my story involves you saving my grandfather's life.
Okay.
When I was called to rush to my grandfather's home in DeKalb, Illinois, on New Year's Day of 2003, and he was apparently at the very end of his life and was in grave danger, and I was very unhappy and was in the car on the way out there and turned on the radio, and there was this extremely funny radio story about speed dating.
Oh, God. That part is true. I did go speed dating in Schaumburg, Illinois, and I did write a radio piece about it. It was brutal.
Well, all I know is that there was the radio piece, and I got to DeKalb, Illinois. My grandfather had a miraculous recovery, and it was definitely your doing, and then we became friends.
See, I believe that happened, but I remember that we actually became friends while playing pool. But maybe I just made that up.
We met before that playing pool, and then you just vanished as like a puff of smoke. And I tried not to hold it against you, but then when you saved my grandfather's life, I felt like we just had to reconnect.
I think that's probably true, because when we first met, I was like, that guy's really interesting, but he's a mathematician, and I have a hard opposition to mathematicians.
I thought it was because I was terrible at pool. Interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, for somebody who understands a lot about geometry, it must be said that you do not play a particularly good game of pool.
Theoretical math, my friend.
So, it's been weird for me to watch this process with you, because you are a regular person. Like I know you as a person long before I knew you as a politician, and long before I saw you wear a suit and tie, which you look great in, by the way.
Don't.
But it's weird to watch your friend run for the governor of a state, especially a state like Illinois, It's been a completely surreal experience for me, and I wonder if you can summarize what it's been like for you, and why this is so important for you, and something that why you made the decision in the first place, and how it's going.
Well, I'll start by saying that I 100% grew up also thinking of politicians as like not totally human, as sort of not. I was interested, right? I read the newspaper, talked about politics around the dinner table with my family, but always thought it was them and not us.
Yeah.
Really, after I started teaching math, that I had this kind of level of frustration with what was happening in the country at the time. It was the war in Iraq, where I felt like, hold on, like it actually is us. That's what democracy is. And I just felt this really profound calling to do something about it. And that completely changed my attitude. And I do think that's somewhat unusual, right? I think a lot of the people in politics are like, they were student government, or they, like when they were 12, they fantasized about where their mother-in-law would stay in the White House when she came to visit them when they were grown-up president. And like, that's not where I came from. It's not where I am. It's not what brought me here. And I think it's really, really useful to have people in politics who haven't always dreamt of doing it, because it just keeps you far more grounded in normal life. And so like my day-to-day life is extremely peculiar, right? The schedule is very intense, and I'm meeting thousands and thousands of people and doing all these, things I wouldn't have otherwise done. But I think it's rooted in a kind of an ordinary family life that I had before making this transition. And that's felt pretty important to me.
Yeah. So your main opponents are Kennedy and a billionaire. On the subject of people who it's difficult to imagine complexly. I think it's always difficult to imagine politicians complexly, but perhaps it's especially difficult to imagine billionaires complexly, at least for me. I wonder if you can talk about what I feel like, and I might be wrong about this, but I feel like we have this weird relationship with billionaires especially, but also with famous families in a way, where we both look to them as like the cause of and the solution to all of our problems. Like they're like both the superheroes and the supervillains, many times like within the same person.
Right.
And I find that fascinating, how we lift up people who've had these financial successes. So, I mean, it is very interesting to me that of the three major candidates in this race, or the three people who are polling really well, you are so normal, like to me anyway. Like obviously you're extraordinarily smart. You're the smartest person I've ever known, and I know that you won't accept that compliment, but it's true. But normal in the sense that, like, I don't know, like I've been to your house. It's nice. But I mean, it's not like Bill Gates' house. So I don't know. I wonder if you could talk about where you see yourself in the race, and how you see yourself differently from the other people who are running.
Yeah, I mean, here's what worries me about what you said. I think part of us as a people have this attitude of like, okay, wait, we're going to wait for somebody else to come in and save us, right? The democracy isn't that thing that we do together. It's the hero riding in on the white horse to rescue us. And, so like when Donald Trump at the Republican convention said, I alone can fix it. I happen to disagree with almost everything that he wants to do to fix it too. But even just the concept of, hey, I am your hero, I will fix it for you, strikes me as super dangerous and not what democracy is supposed to be, and not what empowers ordinary people, and not what is going to ultimately build a society where most people have a level playing field. And so I think this idea that, oh, we need to find a very wealthy person or a very famous person or a person who's somehow been anointed to then be our hero to solve our problems is a really dangerous way to think about government.
What are some of the experiences you've had as a legislator, as somebody who works in government, that you think will be helpful in this new job? Because that's another thing that I think about a lot. Like, I have over the last 10 years developed a certain skill set around making online video and leading teams of people who make online video. And that's given me a certain level of a public platform, along with, the books and stuff. But none of that to me like has made me qualified to be, for instance, the mayor of Indianapolis. And sometimes people will say to me like, oh, you should run for mayor of Indianapolis. People here like you. And I just say, I want to say like, right, but that doesn't mean that I would be good at the job. And like, if you think about what the job entails, I would be terrible at it. You have to go to a number, like you have to go to many meetings. You have to, like it seems to me that the decisions that one makes in business are completely different from the decisions that one makes in government. So I wonder how like you feel like your experience, in the state house and then in the state senate has affected the way that you think about governance and what you would bring to the job as governor.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm like 100% on team John should run for office, but yeah, there are a lot of meetings, many.
Yeah, and I'm out.
Well, we'll talk later. So I've been in the legislature 7 years, and I've like worked on a bunch of different things. I've passed, I think, 89 bills into law when I last counted, and like failed to pass a bunch of other bills I would have liked to pass. And when I think about some of the projects I was most engaged in, like there was a 2-year battle that I fought and eventually won to pass a retirement savings bill that has since become a national model. After I figured out how to pass it here, it was done in Oregon and California and Vermont and Connecticut and Maryland. And I think it's going to eventually become a new way to think about retirement security and dignity for people across the country. That was a 2-year battle. And I drove around the state and met with small groups of people and built this coalition and like begged and pleaded and twisted arms of legislators to eventually get them to vote for the bill, and made these relationships with these people who are still in the legislature and are going to have to work with me when I'm governor to advance an agenda. And like all of that comes from a sense of conviction and a sense of a certain amount of power that you have by virtue of your elected office, and then a tremendous amount of understanding of all the power you don't have and all the other people you have to mobilize to build a coalition that can actually get something done, which is almost the literal opposite of running something in the business context where you have the ability to dictate to others, right? And so if you look at people who move from business into politics without kind of a warm-up transition period, they get into high office and they're like, well, wait a second, I don't have the authority to, by fiat, just declare what everybody else is going to do. And they run into brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. And that's certainly what's happening with Trump. It's happening with the governor here in Illinois, Bruce Rauner, who's just basically accomplished nothing he set out to accomplish because the world of government with all these competing constituencies and stakeholders and limited power that any one person has is like the literal opposite of what he did for 25 years before becoming governor.
Right, but it's also really important, as you point out, it's the fact that the power that any one individual person has is limited is what makes American democracy work. As frustrating as it can be to watch the wheels of the legislative process or the wheels of governance, move very, very slowly. If we lived in a world where you could get things done immediately because you were the dictator, we would live in a dictatorship. I really value, as frustrating as I sometimes find it, it's easy to make fun of the legislative process in the U.S. I really value the fact that ultimately we need power not to be concentrated in the hands of a few, because that becomes very dangerous very quickly.
Yeah, I totally agree. And let's just zoom out for a second. Right now in 2018, in the private sector and in society at large, wealth and power have become dangerously concentrated, I believe. And so let's not emulate that in government. Let's do the exact opposite and use government as a bulwark against that concentration of wealth and power.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's tremendously dangerous. I want to ask you a pretty frank question, which is that you have a lot less money than J.B. Pritzker, and I don't know about Chris Kennedy, but I assume you have less money too. How are you going to win, like, with much less money?
Yeah, so J.B. Pritzker has given his campaign $56 million, which
that's a lot of money.
Exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah, like, pause to consider how much money that is just for a second. That's so much money. Okay, now move on.
No. I'm actually back on your pause. So check this one out. This is amazing. JB has spent more money to try to get nominated for governor of Illinois than Donald Trump spent to successfully get nominated for president of the United States of America.
Wow.
It's crazy money. It's crazy money. And Chris Kennedy has spent, $1.25 million of his own money. And I wrote my campaign a $56 check, just last week, and it was a sacrifice, but I'm a believer too. So there's two things that we've seen happen. One is that we've had incredible grassroots energy, tons of volunteers that I hope people watching will be willing to join those volunteers. Grassroots groups like MoveOn.org and just Today Our Revolution have endorsed our campaign, which gives us momentum and energy and people and time and all that stuff. And then partially because of all that momentum, we've been able to raise an awful lot of money just from ordinary people, from now tens of thousands of people, many millions of dollars. It's nowhere near as much as 56 million, but there's lots of examples where somebody can win with a lot less money if they're a better fit for what the voters actually want, which is fortunately where we are right now, and B, if they have enough money to just tell a story. It doesn't need to be as much, it needs to be enough.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting, Daniel. I have to say, when you started out in politics in general, I think I said this in my most recent Blog Brothers video, I was not a believer. Not because I didn't think you were talented or because I didn't think you were brilliant, but because I just didn't think people like you ended up being politicians, like math professors, or ended up being successful politicians. And then when you told me you were going to run for governor, I was like, well, it's a lot of money. How are you going to, it's so much money. It's so much, it's such a big, thing. And yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to watch the success that you've had. And it's amazing to see the momentum that your campaign has and the fact that, you're now in some of the publicly published polls are, within the margin of error of somebody who's spending, tens of millions of dollars on this. It's amazing. And it does speak, I think, ultimately to how democracy, one of the things that you guys say a lot in your campaign is, we're not having an auction, we're having an election. And it speaks to me about the fact that that's true. In the end, people can spend all the money they want, but the voters are going to vote. And I found it really encouraging, and the way you've gone about your campaign in general. I have to do a lightning round where I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions. Okay. What is your favorite kind of mathematics?
Topology.
Yeah, that's your thing, right? That's what you did.
Yeah. Did you want a more edgy answer?
One time I asked Daniel to give me an example of what kind of work he did, and he said that to make it really, really simple, I think that triangles are just really bloated circles. No, yeah, circles are really bloated triangles. I can't even get that right. He said circles are really bloated triangles.
It stuck with you.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good description of a topological problem. How many meetings a day do you have?
So many meetings.
Really?
Yeah, so many meetings.
More than 5?
It depends on the day.
Oh my God. I mean, I had one meeting today earlier, and it was, some of the people who are in the meeting are watching now, so I apologize, but it was excruciating.
I've come to terms over the course of my life that it is possible to be polite without being inauthentic.
Yeah, I guess I haven't gotten there.
Authenticity is better, but I think you can do both.
What's the weirdest thing that you've done during this campaign? The weirdest place that you've been, or town hall that you've attended, or etc.
If you want me, I think you would have to talk about eating a fried Oreo on video at the state fair. But much more interesting than me, so many ways to end that sentence, is the dank meme stash that my supporters have set up on Facebook. And I'm sure you learned this lesson, a solid decade or more before me, but there's something peculiar about what happens when smart people do creative things about you on the internet.
Yeah, it's really nice. I've enjoyed the Biss please signs that I've seen. Yeah, there's a lot of There's a lot of good memeing going around your campaign, which I guess these days is tremendously important. It also makes me feel very old. In my day, I'm not even going to finish that sentence. The last question that I have, and I'm just going to ask it this way because I don't actually know what it means. The question is Monty Hall problem to keep it light.
This is the problem about the goats and the cars?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know what the Monty Hall problem is. Here's the Monty Hall problem is that you're playing Let's Make a Deal, which was a game show. It might still be a game show, but it used to be hosted by a guy named Monty Hall. And there's 3 doors, and you have to pick one of the 3 doors. And behind one is a car, and behind one is a goat, and behind the third one is like $100, right?
I think it's just 2 goats in a car, but
fine, 2 goats in a car, and you open up one. Well, you finish.
Yeah, you say, "Hey, I want to open door 1," and then Monty Hall says, "Well, hold on. Before you do that, let me show you that door 2 has a goat behind it." And the question is, are you sure you still want door 1, or do you want to switch to door 3?
And the answer is
switch to door 3.
It makes no sense. It shouldn't matter.
There was only a 1 in 3 chance that you were right in the first place, so there's a 2 in 3 chance that it's in door 3.
What?
I mean, when you said door 1, there was like a 1/3 chance you were right. So there's a 2/3 chance it's some other door. And what Monty Hall has told you is that if it's in another door, it's not door 2. So that 2/3 chance is a 2/3 shot that door 3 is right. Pick door 3. There's a 2 in 3 chance you'll get the car. It'll be amazing.
I mean, it's been explained to me by you 450 times over the last 15 years, and I still don't. You don't know what's behind.
I feel like you're off message if the message is Daniel Biss is a good teacher.
Daniel Biss is a good teacher. I'm not a very good student. I'm going to ask some questions from our live stream viewers here on Facebook Live. Jennifer asks, what is the biggest issue facing Illinois, and how would you try to solve that issue?
Illinois has a broken tax system and broken school funding system, and the result is that we overburden the middle class, overburden the working poor, don't ask the wealthy to pay their share. It's not normal. Other states aren't like this, and the consequence is that our school funding system is more unjust and inequitable than any other state in the country. So you got to fix that, first by repealing the flat tax provision of the Constitution, which even Indiana doesn't have in their Constitution, though you guys have a flat tax by choice. Repeal that. Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry. I feel responsible for that, but I'm not. I'm not. I voted.
No, it's not your fault. But if you were to run for governor of Indiana, you could fix it quicker.
I don't know that I could actually, because I wouldn't win. So
anyway,
yeah, okay, that's
repeal a flat tax provision, have a fair income tax, fund schools properly, bring down property taxes, and then find other progressive sources of revenue like taxing financial transactions and carried interest. If you get that stuff done, you've actually built a way more modern, efficient, economically just economy and tax system, and then also a school funding system that actually will work for everybody as opposed to people in a few neighborhoods that are fortunate enough to be affluent.
Do you think you could get that done with the current legislature?
So I do. Like, this is one of the things when I say all the stuff I just said, the response is like, yeah, Daniel, that sounds great, but it's never going to happen. Why don't you go think about something reasonable? And what I tell people is this isn't some wacky thing I invented by myself, or, I found a thing that's only ever been done in Singapore one time. But my whole ambition here is to be as good as Ohio. It should not be that difficult.
Okay, next question. Allegra asks, I'm going to the University of Chicago next year. What's your favorite place on campus?
So I think the library is beautiful, actually. I did not spend all that much time there when I was a mathematics professor because we had our own way less beautiful library, but you should. And the quad is like lovely in the winter when there's snow on the trees. It's really nice.
Jason asks, how do you plan to reach out to people in Southern Illinois?
So people in Southern Illinois have felt pretty ignored by the Democratic Party for a while now. And to be totally honest, they've been pretty ignored by a lot of the Democratic Party. So 2 things. Number 1, I just have to show up. I travel all over the place all the time. I'm visiting new places every single week and really, really including people in a grassroots vision of the campaign. So after I leave, they can start to build real organizations that are not just a part of our campaign, but a part of the community. And then the other part is to actually have a state Democratic Party that's not only focused on competitive swing districts that the party thinks are going to flip from Democrat to Republican or vice versa right now. Instead, you have to have a Democratic Party that's just everywhere, that supports local candidates everywhere, that lifts them up and builds local organizations and has activity everywhere that's rooted in what the people in those neighborhoods actually want. By having the whole thing so centralized and focusing all the attention on a few parts of the state, you've basically taken our base for granted and written other people off, and it's ugly and it's alienating to people, and in the long term, it's politically counterproductive too.
Yeah, I mean, I think also you've lived that in a way by flipping a red district in your 2010 campaign for state rep. Like you've seen that that it can happen if you go and make the case to people, which you did, I think, by knocking on every single door in the district.
I knocked on a lot of doors.
Janine asks, will you please tell us about a book you've enjoyed recently?
So when my running mate, Leticia Wallace, joined the ticket, she gave me The Alchemist, which I thought was an appropriate story for a long shot campaign of two normal people trying to take on a whole collection of billionaires and nephews of presidents. It's a story about following your heart and listening to your instincts and finding surprising ways to live your dreams in so doing. And that was the second to last novel I read. And the last novel I read was called Turtles All the Way Down. And it would be
that's nice
both of us that were to talk about it now.
That's very kind of you to read it. I appreciate it.
I hate to say this as a kind of abundance of Catherine's partisan, but I have to tell you, it's my favorite book of yours.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. It was certainly the hardest to write and the one that I most don't want to ever write again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you got a lot of praise for it being brave, which it was incredibly brave, but it's also a really, really good book. So
thank you. Thanks, Daniel. That means a lot to me. On the subject of our friendship, Jama Lee asks, will Daniel still be Nerdfighteria's official mathematician if he is elected governor, which is something that I've thought and worried a lot about.
I don't even understand why that's a question for me. As long as Nerdfighteria will have me, I'm the resident mathematician. If you find somebody better, I mean, I'll respect that judgment, but I'll be super sad about it.
I mean, I very much look forward to calling you in the governor's mansion and asking you to do some basic arithmetic for me, which you can do in your head and continues to be pretty impressive to me. Drew asks, as a mathematics student in Illinois, what do you think is a good way to get my peers at school to vote in the primary?
Well, we'd love to hook people up with our volunteer organization to give you more specific technical tools around that. But the basic message is care visibly, right? Like the answer should not be some technical thing about here's the right way to knock on the right door. Like if people around you see you actually caring, then that will inspire them to vote. If they see you wearing a button around and then talking passionately about what the campaign means to you and how your life and the lives of the people around you would be improved if we get this right, then they'll feel inspired to vote. Like ultimately the most predictive factor in voter turnout is just how excited people feel about the election. Help people around you get excited by being excited yourself.
Katie asks, your running mate, Leticia Wallace, is basically amazing. How are you planning on utilizing her awesomeness in the lieutenant governor position? My
running mate, Leticia Wallace, is in fact amazing. And I'm just going to say a word about her. She was born on the south side of Chicago, grew up in the south suburbs, moved, she went to Western Illinois University, and then while raising a son as a single mother, put herself through a PhD program at Northern Illinois University and eventually wound up raising him in Rockford, where she became a state representative. So she's incredibly smart and tenacious and powerful, and she's been an amazing state representative fighting for economic justice and especially for childcare, because the truth is there's not a hell of a lot of single moms in the legislature, and so she knows the issue in a way that others don't. The Constitution is pretty thin when it comes to the lieutenant governor's roles, and so I could enumerate those, but the more important part is that we chose to run as a team, and she is a partner in decision-making, and she's going to be a partner in governance. She knows the legislature well, so she's going to help actually pass laws, but she also is just a thought partner in all aspects of building out our platform, and she's going to be amazing as lieutenant governor.
Second to last question for me. What is your advice for young people? This is from Scott, who want to get involved in politics.
So Scott, this is a hard question for me to answer and not sound like a self-serving monster. So I can't solve that problem. I just want to name it so I'm at least acknowledging it. Get involved in a campaign. Show up, volunteer. I was first like a young math professor, freaked out about the country being all screwed up, and the question I asked myself was, what do I do? And the answer I came to was just show up to meetings. Sorry, John. Show up to events, functions, knock on doors, meet people who are passionate about the things that you're passionate about, and then do stuff to make it better. For instance, in a political campaign or in an issue campaign or in trying to influence the city council or your local school board. And by showing up, you do two things. One is you kind of flex a muscle of civic engagement and activism. And the other is that you meet a whole bunch of people who are doing the same thing and can one day be helpful when you run for office. And so I think people tend to kind of overthink it and try to design their master plan, and I'm going to run for this office at this date. And just show up and do stuff that feels meaningful and be present and engaged and listen openly and think critically about yourself and your own privilege and your own biases and learn from the people around you and meet people who are engaged in this stuff. And eventually you'll find yourself in a position to do whatever you want in politics. It's in certain respects, passion and the willingness to show up can get you a long, long way in this world. Ooh, and be nice to people.
So true. Last question, Daniel. This one is from Sara. Aside from financial contributions, what is the best way for someone outside of Illinois to help?
So we are in this new technological world where it's surprisingly doable. So I would like everyone to go to danielbiss.com/donate if they're able to make a small donation to unlock this match that's been offered. But go to danielbiss.com/volunteer to volunteer, and we have both remote phone banking that people are able to do. And then we also, and this makes me very uncomfortable, but here we are in good old 2018 and there's nothing to be done about it. You can volunteer by texting now. And so if people are out of state or not excited about making cold calls to strangers, sign up for our volunteer page. We'll hook you up with our texting app, and it's actually a really good way to have substantive conversations with voters that's, I think, more comfortable for some people. The other thing I would say, besides going to the website to donate and going to the website to volunteer, is, again, just talk about the campaign. I mean, if you live, in New Zealand and know nobody in Illinois whatsoever, then maybe posting on your Facebook page about the campaign constantly could become tiresome to people. But in general, most of us have, big distributed networks, and the more enthusiasm and passion and energy that exists in the real world, which is to say, out in the street when you're wearing a button, talking to friends and neighbors, or posting on social media, the more of that enthusiasm that exists, the better off we are. So just talk about it, and talk about it as in the way that it means something to you. It's most important for you to speak authentically about what made you interested and passionate about that campaign, because that is infectious, and that's what starts to grow and grow and grow until we're at a point where we can actually win this thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Daniel. Thanks, everybody who's been watching, and for all your comments and questions. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll get to do it again sometime, maybe during the general election.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, John. It was really fun, and thanks to everybody for joining.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.